Tonight we have some news on the FAQ for Nationals, and this is for the Time Wizard tournaments, and it is new. So what is this? It is a format that's replacing Ultimate Time Wizard from what I see, even though that there's Ultimate Time Wizard still listed on this FAQ. But Time Wizard events use the available cards, format, and limited list, rules regarding drawing on the first turn, and dual field of those selected Time Wizard formats. So it's exactly the same, but there is a new disclaimer. And this disclaimer is starting at the NAWCQ. Current game mechanics and current card text will be used for Time Wizard events. This defeats the purpose of what Time Wizard events were supposed to be. People want to go back and play those formats because they are nostalgic to them, or they want something different to what the TCG has. Now, why does this matter? Well, let me pull up this list real quick, and let's talk about some of the changes. So, back in the day, Raikou doesn't so literally, Raikou targeted back then, but now it doesn't target. So it can pop a Fortress and Titanial with no problem. There's no priority, which is a fundamental that died off back, I believe, in 2012. The Absolute Zero for Elemental Heroes doesn't trigger when compulsed. You have 3 Rivalry and 3 Gozen, makes Frogs terrible. Aaron doesn't trigger flip effects. If you DD Crow a Dandelion, there's no tokens. Goyo is no longer a card because it needs an Earth Tuner monster. Future Fusion has its errata, making Dragon decks unplayable. Brain Control, Rescue Cat, Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, and Bryonic Dragon of the Ice Barrier all have their erratas, essentially making these cards so useless. Trap Hole, Raigeki Break are literally going to be great cards in the format because there aren't priority. And then you have Gores and Stardust Dragon both being broken cards. This single change kills so many cards. It also breaks other cards that weren't good in the format. But this is not the spirit of Yu-Gi-Oh! This is not the spirit of past formats. This will literally make a lot of people stop playing these Time Wizard formats, or stores will use the old rulings and old style of what the past formats were, because these are not good changes. And I don't see the thought process behind this at all. There are arguments for that, but the old card text is what made the formats how they were. And it's probably an accessibility concern, making it easier for people to jump into the format without needing to know a bunch of old card text, which I do get. But it sucks for many other reasons because people played those formats. They really enjoyed these formats, and we have resources online like Wikipedia that has everything listed for all these old card texts and all these old rulings. And I wish Konami sometimes would get their heads out of their asses and not ruin something of Yu-Gi-Oh! That people really enjoy, especially something like this, because this has pretty much made a lot of people say, we're done with Time Wizard, we're gonna go somewhere else. This is one thing that you do not want in a card game where you're forcing and alienating players who want to play these older formats, who are actually passionate and want to play with these older style cards, older text cards, and with these older rulings. But this kind of just bums a lot of people out because it just kills so many decks outright, and it's just not fair for the people who invested money once again into these old formats just for them to kill this off. Now, what do I see happening? Personally, I think Konami's going to revert this with the amount of backlash that there's going to be, because this is not okay. This is just making it where a lot of decks are just dead, just out of the water. It boosts a lot of cards that are randomly good today, and back in the day, it just makes cards way more broken. It makes it where the format isn't even what the format was. But this has been my 2 cents on this. I'm not going to stretch this out to 8 minutes, because honestly, this is not impressive at all from what Konami's doing. I really enjoyed playing Time Wizard formats with friends, but seeing this just makes me kind of livid in a way, on top of what we got for Battle of Legends Monster Mayhem, which doesn't help this situation at all. But another thing that does change are the pendulum zones. Because they aren't their own zones anymore. They go to the spell and trap card zones, from what I'm getting at. But that's another conversation for another day in Discords. But honestly, I'm not impressed, Konami. Please revert this change, because this should not be a thing.